Good afternoon everyone, and myself Nivedha Raja. This session is going to be about radius and ulnar bone. And moving on to radius, it is a lateral bone of forearm. It contains the upper end, shaft and lower end. Upper end has head, neck and radial tuberosity. And moving on to the head, it is a disc-shaped structure separated from the shaft by neck. Its upper surface articulates with the capitulum of humerus. Medial margin of the head articulates with the radial notch of the ulna to form superior radio-ulnar joint. Neck is the lower constricted part of the bone below the head. Moving on to radial tuberosity, it is the below medial part of neck and provides insertion to biceps brachii muscles. And this picture shows the presence of radius and ulnar bone. So the head of the radius would be a disc-shaped part, and it contains neck, a constricted part. Radius provides radial tuberosity medially. Moving on to shaft, it is the elongated cylindrical part containing or connecting two ends. It has three borders and three surfaces, namely interosseous border, anterior and posterior border, and surfaces of interosseous membrane, anterior and posterior surfaces. Moving on to the lower end, the inferior surface of the lower end articulates with scaphoid laterally and lunate medially. Listus tubercle. The posterior aspect of lower end presents a tubercle called dorsal or listus tubercle. Styloid process. It is a conical projection from the lower end at the lateral aspect. Medial part of the lower end, known as ulnar notch, articulates with the head of ulna to form the inferior radio-ulnar joint. This is a carpal, metacarpal and phalangeus bone, where the radius bone is literally connected to the scaphoid and lunate. The applied anatomy of radius bone would be of Colles fracture and Smith's fracture. Colles fracture, a fall on the outstretched hand, results in the fracture of distal end of the radius. The distal fractured fragment is displaced upwards and posteriorly by brachioradialis muscle. This produces Dinner-Fonck deformity. Smith's fracture. It is the reverse of Colles fracture. It is produced by fall on the back of the hand. This distal fractured element is displaced forward and upwards. And moving on to the ulnar bone. It is a medial bone of forearm. It has three parts in it: upper end, shaft and lower end. Upper end contains olecranon process, coronoid process, radial notch, trochlear notch. And olecranon process, it projects forward from the uppermost part of ulna. It bends forward, forming a beaker-like projection. It occupies the olecranon fossa of the humerus when the elbow is extended. Triceps muscle is inserted into its superior surface. Coronoid process, it is a self-like projection from the upper end and anterior part of the shaft below the olecranon process. Its anterior aspect bears a rough impression called the ulnar tuberosity, which provides insertion to brachialis muscle. Radial notch. Lateral surface of the coronoid process presents a radial notch to articulates with the head of radius to form superior radio-ulnar joint. Its margins provides attachment to annular ligament. Trochlear notch. It's between olecranon and coronoid process. It articulates with the trochlea of humerus. Now this picture shows the presence of the head of radius, radial tuberosity and interosseous membranes, styloid process and its listus tubercle, both radius and ulnar bones. Shaft has three borders and three surfaces. The lateral border provides attachment to the interosseous membrane. Same, it contains anterior and posterior border and anterior posterior with interosseous surfaces. Lower end, it contains head. It's a lateral part, articulates with the ulnar notch of radius, forming inferior radial-ulnar joint. Its inferior surface is separated from the carpal bone by an articular disc of the inferior radio-ulnar joint. Styloid process, it projects from the posteromedial aspect of the lower end. It is palpable on the posteromedial part of wrist. It lies 1.25 cm above the level of top of the styloid process of the radius. In the applied anatomy, fracture of shaft of ulna may be associated with fracture of radius. Fracture of olecranon process occurs if one falls on the point of elbow. Thank you.